Good morning, folks. This is Jay from Cold Nights, and this is another episode of the Cold Takes podcast. Today, we have a very special Valentine's Day episode where we're going to explore gaming as a couple. My special guest today is Mandy from the Miss Mandia channel. How you doing this morning, Mandy?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then go ahead and introduce your husband after.
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Mandy. I have a YouTube channel called Miss Mandia where I talk about video games I've been playing and do occasional reviews. I'm mostly interested in JRPGs and also visual novels and adventure games, or anything that has a really good story, really. To give you an idea of my favorite games, I love Grandia 2, the Zero Escape series, Ace Attorney, and Final Fantasy. And yeah, we've also got my husband, Tony, here today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mandy's husband. We've been together for 6 years, married for 2 of those years. So we're still pretty newly married, but been together for a little while. And I've got a lot of hobbies, but gaming is a big one of them. So happy to be here to talk about games.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. So y'all know who I am. All right. But I would like to introduce my wife, April. We have been married for 20 years, together 22 or 23. And we have quite a history in gaming together. So April, why don't you take over the mic and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's April. I've been playing games for, oh God, probably since I was like 6 years old. I would say my favorite genre is probably a little bit of everything except maybe first-person shooters because I'm just really bad at them.
Good deal. So we do have some great topics for today. So the first thing we're going to kind of go over is our histories in gaming as a couple, and maybe some of the games that we've enjoyed together, or even kind of we'll get into a little later, MMOs that we may have played together. So I'll go ahead and pose the question to Mandy and Tony. So what games have you guys played together, and how long have you been gaming together?
I think the first game we played together was probably Persona 5.
Mm-hmm.
But that was back when we were long distance and we both had a copy of the game and we would go through the same dungeons together and watch the cutscenes together.
Yep. And we actually started playing that one before we were dating,
Oh,
before
yeah,
we were
yeah.
officially a couple. But I think, did we start dating in the middle of playing that? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah. It took
Yeah,
us a while.
Yeah,
to
we played for
get
about a
through the
year, a year and a half or something like that. But it's sweet because when you look at our PlayStation trophies, we have all the boss trophies at exactly the same minute
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
through the game. So, yep, that was our first game together, Persona 5.
That is pretty neat that your trophies are down to the minute together. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they must round it or something.
So how did you guys meet?
We met through an online fan club for 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors.
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep, very nerdy way to meet. But yeah, Mandy was in Australia and I was in the US. So around the globe.
Yeah.
So actually, our story is kind of similar. We met online too. We were actually playing some online role playing, kind of it was on AOL. That's how long ago this was. And in the chat rooms, there was two separate groups of people. There was people that played a Dungeons and Dragons role playing, and there was people that did White Wolf with Vampire the Masquerade and stuff like that. And we kind of met in that community. And then we started talking out of character. And I live up in New Hampshire, and I realized that she lived down in Boston. And after we kept talking for a while, we decided it'd be pretty cool to meet. And we were both actually under 18 at the time. So our parents were a little anxious,
Yeah.
thinking we were showing up to meet a serial killer.
Yeah.
So we actually met at a 99 restaurant with our dads as chaperones. So
That's sweet.
that was pretty
That
fun.
is sweet.
And then April, do you remember what the first games that we kind of watched each other play together were?
I remember we played 10 together, like we were racing each other to see who would beat it first. Um, I think the first game that I don't know if we played it together, but I remember you let me borrow your PlayStation. I think it might have been one of the Silent Hill games.
Yeah, and then we had quite a history with it after. Um, I loved 2, and we both played Silent Hill 2 quite a lot. And then I wasn't as interested in 3, but I was willing to watch her play it, and she played through and beat it, and I got a pretty good appreciation for that. And then I remember I had fallen ill when Silent Hill 4 came out, and we actually both liked it a lot. I know not a ton of people love that entry in the series, but she kind of played through when I wasn't feeling too good. And I remember watching her and thinking that that was pretty special time together. And then we did the same thing with the Wii. I loved a lot of like the Zelda games on the Wii, but I despised the motion controls. So I wanted to experience them. And she was willing to experience them with motion controls, and I was willing to watch. So that
That's
was
really sweet.
I think, what was it? The one with the dragon in the sky. I was so angry and so frustrated, and you just sat there watching me get so angry at it.
Argarok, the Spire Dragon.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember that. You had to use like the hook shot.
I was like, this is so stupid.
Good times. So now, did you guys play any MMOs together, Mandy and Tony?
Just Final Fantasy 14. That's the only MMO I've played so far.
Good times. And you guys are both active in it?
Yeah.
No, are you at the same place in the story, or is one of you lagging behind?
Oh yeah, we go through the MSQ together. So
Yep.
That's
we
pretty
actually we play with one of our friends and we read out all the lines to each other just over Discord.
Oh,
So
nice.
we're pretty slow
Yeah.
because of that. But it's a lot of fun to go through.
Yeah, it is fun.
That's kind of a unique way to play. That's pretty neat. That's a pretty good idea for people that might be listening. Kind of gives some more interactivity between the group as you're consuming that content together. We did quite a lot of 14 as well. I kind of stopped after Stormblood, maybe. And then she got crazy into it, and she's doing all these like advanced raids now and stuff. So I no longer do it, but she's got pretty far in it. But yeah, we also played Ragnarok Online. That's kind of dating ourselves too. That was back in like the early 2000s. I had got really into that. Like I was like a market baron. I had like everything you could have and was like controlling the economy with a couple other guys. So she benefited from that, kind of could have whatever she wanted. And we also played ESO online quite a lot. Now, I think, Tony, you had been into ESO?
I played some, yeah. I played a little bit with one of my friends, but not very much. Maybe a couple play sessions.
I enjoyed the Cyrodiil, like the Alliance raids. When you would fight over the castles and stuff. Like I always thought that was really fun and kind of like anxiety inducing.
That's cool. Yeah, it seemed fun. We were thinking of getting into it a little more. One of my good old friends and I, we play a lot of MMOs together. But our Elder Scrolls Online experience was we went to the first town, and he told me to stand lookout while he went and stole some stuff, and I got distracted looking at something else. So a guard caught him stealing, and he got kicked out of the town. And then so I failed my duty as a watchman, and then we stopped playing.
That's terrible. Yeah, so the cool thing about those games though is like if you ever do decide to get back into them, so much content has come out for that since then. You could play for probably years and never run out of things to do now.
Yeah.
So that's some pretty neat stuff. I think a lot of people underestimate the usefulness of gaming as a way to bond between like partners. I honestly can't imagine what it would be like to be married to or partnered with someone that didn't enjoy gaming or question my consumption of gaming or purchases. I think that would be really tough to do.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Have either of you ever dated someone that did not game and did not like that you gamed?
I don't think I have. No.
I did have a girlfriend one time who was not very much into gaming, and it was definitely it was difficult because she didn't really get the appeal of gaming. And so if I wanted to spend a night gaming, she's like, why do you want to do that when we could do something more fun? So obviously that wasn't a good sign for the future of the relationship, but I think that's it was in part her perspective on it as well. I'm sure there can be people who have different interests and still get along and respect each other's interests. But I'm very happy that Mandy and I both love gaming. So
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, I think that some people, maybe, you know, in their relationships, one of them is an active gamer and one is not so active, but they're willing to watch and participate and talk about it. And I think that might be all right. But I can't imagine having to have that discussion that you were talking about, like every weekend when you want to, you know, do a raid or, you know, try to take down a boss in like a single player game. I can't imagine having that conversation very often.
yeah.
Before it would get extremely tiring. So
Yeah, I feel very lucky.
Yeah, one of the things that Mandy said when we started dating was she said, I can't imagine myself being with someone who doesn't like Grandia and 999. So I'm like, well, I lucked out that I like those games.
Maybe a bit too high of a standard, but
yeah, Grandia. Oh man, we could talk about that forever. I remember Grandia 2 was a real highlight for me. I played it on the Dreamcast. Like I was a huge Dreamcast fanboy. And that was just an incredible experience. And then I had gone back after and experienced the first one. And those were just some good times. The Dreamcast was really kind of like a place where there was some hidden gems.
Yeah.
A lot of it did get ported over to other systems after. But I think of games like Evolution and Evolution 2. Those are really incredible. Skies of Arcadia. Such a great system. Did you play Grandia 2 on the Dreamcast or was it on a different console?
I played it on the PS2 originally, and I actually didn't know about the Dreamcast at that time, and I found out about it because I read that like the best version of Grandia 2 at that time was the Dreamcast one, so I thought, well, I'm gonna have to get that.
Yeah, that was a real lost opportunity there. Sega kind of bowed out quickly. Kind of sad. I think there was a lot of potential there for sure. So the next thing I had on here was Final Fantasy 14. So my first question I'll ask, and I'll shoot this one over to April first. If you could take somebody that has not played Final Fantasy 14 and kind of try to sell the game to them and tell them why it's worthwhile to play, what would you say to them?
Part of me wants to meme it, but in all seriousness, I would say for an MMO, it has one of the best stories I have ever experienced. Like, even among, like, I would say it's more of a JRPG with friends as opposed to a full MMO. And unless you plan to do end game rating, you really don't have to do multiplayer stuff. You'll just see people in the towns. But most of the story is just you. And there's something really interesting about you getting to create a character and you're the main character and you can they make it really open so that you can make the character be anything you want. You can make your own story for your character. And I don't know, it's really enjoyable.
Good deal. I think I would be sold if I wasn't already someone who had played it. So Mandy, what do you love about the game, and what would you tell people that hadn't tried it out yet?
Well, I think everything April said was very well said. I'd probably also talk about the community. I think it's really, really friendly, and especially because it was my first MMO, it was very welcoming and just a really wholesome experience.
Good deal. Good deal. So Tony, do you have any thoughts on 14 and how you would get someone interested in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think it's really appealing to people who maybe don't want to invest as much time into an MMO in terms of grinding things or having multiple characters to unlock everything or have all the professions. Because in Final Fantasy 14, you can have one character and they can basically do everything. They can be every class and they can have every crafting profession. And so I think it's something that's good for people who, maybe this is their first MMO or, they're just not into that traditional MMO style of like, grinding quests. And from what I hear, I'm not an expert on Final Fantasy 14, but there is that kind of stuff later in the game where you can grind if you want to. But like April said, the story is such a big focus in 14 that you can kind of just make a character and play through the story and have fun. And in that way, it's almost like a single player game, like she said. So yeah, I agree with both Mandy and April on what they said.
Good deal. Yeah, I definitely want to kind of zero in on the fact that as someone who does love actually grinding and spending mass amounts of time on one thing, when I played back in the day, I was super obsessed with getting all of the triple triad cards.
Oh yeah.
And I was super obsessed with the gold saucer. I remember feeling very accomplished on our server at the time. I want to say we were playing on Zalera. I was one of the first people that was able to get like the full set of the Senor Sabatender gear.
Cool.
And I was
Nice.
playing a samurai when it had first come out, and I had to have that incredible, like almost lightsaber looking samurai sword. So getting that and being able to glam it on the weapons I was using, I felt so accomplished, like parading around with that. And as far as like time consumption, I remember I was one of the only people around in our group of friends that was willing to take the time to do the Moogle Postmaster quest. So I had that like police looking outfit and the cap. And I thought that was like the coolest thing. So I do love that there's the story and that it can be very single player or multiplayer based if you want it to be, but there is that ability to really put your nose down and put the axe to the grindstone. So I think it offers so many different things for so many different people. And honestly, I keep thinking that I'll go back. So I've been paying for a sub for years. Thinking I'll go back. So they're making some pretty good free money off me. So yeah, I think it's a game that a lot of people should check out. I think a lot of people are intimidated by MMOs.
Yeah.
They think that the communities will be negative or toxic, or they think it's too much of a time sink. But I definitely would say it's something that people could get into as their first MMO, like Mandy did. So I think that's something pretty neat. So real quick, I'm curious to see what everyone chose as their initial race for their character.
Oh yeah.
So Mandy, what did you choose as your initial race?
I chose a Hyur. I usually just do human races because I like to try to create a character that looks like me. I think it's fun.
Nice. I definitely did the same thing. I was always, even in like Elder Scrolls Online, just choosing like the Highlander person or a Briton, just wanting to be. I like to play as someone similar to me, but in fantastical situations.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I did it. Tony, what did you choose as your first race?
Well, I also played Final Fantasy 11, I should
Yeah.
mention. And in Final Fantasy 11, I was a Taru Black Mage.
Nice.
And in WoW, I was a dwarf or a gnome, alternatively. So maybe you can guess that in Final Fantasy 14, I was a Lalafell.
Nice. Popatos.
So, yeah, little potato. And I made him look like an old man. So he's got like a gray beard and little rosy cheeks. So
awesome.
He's pretty cute. And actually, if you're familiar with Jesse Cox, we play, I guess, on his server group. And we were running through Ul'dah one day. He saw my character and he's like, "Oh my God, look at that cute little old man." So I've been called out by a streamer.
That's awesome. April, I honestly don't remember. What was your original character?
The one I had when I first started playing at launch, or when I started again, or what am I playing currently?
Well, either, I guess all of them.
All of the above.
When I first started at launch, I was a cat girl. But
Cliched.
yeah, I stopped playing right around like I played for what, like 4 or 5 months, and I stopped playing. And then I started again in like the Heavensward patches, and I completely forgot how to play, so I started over. And I was a Lalafell then.
Nice.
And now I'm a male Elezen.
Nice.
Oh,
Good
I
time.
wanted to be tall, okay?
yeah.
Tiny people. In case the viewers don't know, me and April are complete opposites. I am a giant. I'm 6'8", and I've always been like a massive dude. And she is 5'2", and so she's a tiny one. Our son, he's 12. He's taller than her. He's not quite as tall as me yet, but he might reach me. So yeah, I can imagine her wanting to be tall. I can understand that. So all right. So I think we're going to take a break real quick. And when we come back, we got some more wonderful topics with Mandy, Tony, and April. Welcome back, folks. We are back on the Cold Takes podcast, and my guests today are Mandy from the Miss Mandia channel, her husband, Tony, and my lovely wife, April. So the next thing that we're going to be getting into is what I like to call the lightning round. It gives us a little bit of like a game show type of feel. So they're basically going to be opinion questions that I'm going to ask our guests about, some of their favorite characters, franchises, games, music and games, etc. So I'll read off the question and then we'll kind of go around. So the first question is always a fun one. What is your favorite Final Fantasy character ever? So let's go ahead and start with Tony on this one.
Oh, that's a hard question. This is a lightning question. Let's see. Probably off the top of my head, it would have to be Steiner.
That's a good choice. Steiner is a very actually deep character, and I love his relationship with Beatrix.
Yep. Yeah, me too.
Good deal. April, what do you got?
Oh, don't make me choose that. Um, I, okay, so that's really hard because I really, really like Emmett Silk, but there's also Orin, so I can't choose.
All right. I guess we could do two then. What do you got, Mandy?
That is a really hard question. I kind of want to be boring and say Cloud, but I also really love Vivi from Final Fantasy IX and Laguna from 8. I don't know if I have like one favorite.
Nice. Good deal. I would say mine is probably hands down, probably Renoa. I was one of those like geeky boys that was like totally in love with her, like she was real when I was like 15. So that for sure. So the next one, I'll ask it, but I want to make sure that you've all played. Has everyone played a Fire Emblem game?
Yep.
No.
All right, well, I guess you'll have to sit this one out. But favorite Fire Emblem character? Why don't we start with Mandy?
I want to say Frederick from Awakening because he was my husband. I thought he was really cool.
Good deal. Good deal. And then April, you don't do the Fire Emblem. So
Yeah.
Tony, what is your favorite Fire Emblem character?
My favorite Fire Emblem character is definitely Sigurd. Sigurd's my favorite, though I like a lot of characters from Genealogy of a Holy War. And
Did you get to play Engage?
Follow-up. I'm in the middle of it now, yeah.
Sigurd is fun for sure.
Yeah.
So mine, I hate to pick someone from Three Houses, but I adored Claude and his kind of attitude, and he was my husband in that game too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mine too.
I thought that I don't know, his story was just amazing. And I thought that he was the most qualified to be a leader temperament wise out of all of the cadets. So
Yeah.
All right. This one is definitely one everyone can do. Favorite JRPG villain? Why don't we go ahead
Ooh.
and start with Mandy on this one?
Oh, well, probably Melphis from Grandia 2.
Good choice. April?
I'm just gonna go with Emmett Selk because I'm a simp.
Tony?
I'll say Dark Dragon from Shining Force.
Nice. I was just playing through Shining Force the other day on the Nintendo Switch Online.
Oh, really?
Mine is definitely probably a tie between Sephiroth and Kuja.
Mm.
I thought based on their stories, they were both people that had a very good reason to be angry, and they acted accordingly. So, all right. So this is a good one. What is one holy grail game that you wish you could add to your game collection?
Ooh.
Why don't we start with Tony on this one?
My favorite series is the Shining series. So if I could get Shining in the Holy Ark, the English version, that's one of my biggest wants.
What's that going for currently?
Anywhere between 200 and 300.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a copy for 200 at a store we went to recently, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty good deal. And I thought about it pretty hard, but I decided to wait. So
April, what about you?
I so I would have the thing is the game that I would want the most you can't get, is impossible to get, and kind of doesn't exist. And it was the original real Master Quest for the Nintendo 64 DD.
Nice.
Like, it's only people have only seen screenshots of it. It was only ever made like in like it wasn't really fully made, and yeah, yeah.
There might be like a prototype card of it out there somewhere, but I'm sure if
Yeah.
someone finds it, it'll be quite valuable. All right, Mandy, what do we got for you?
I really don't know. Can you think of anything, Tony, that I've been wanting a lot?
um yeah, I don't know about
Yeah.
one thing. I think you have a lot of your Holy Grail
Yeah,
items in
I
terms of
do.
Grandia stuff.
Yeah. I guess probably like the American copy of Ever 17 was one of the big ones, but I just recently found a copy of it pretty cheap. It's incomplete, but I'm still really happy to have it. Probably other than that, I would love to have it's not a game technically, but the 999 bracelet that was a pre-order bonus for the game, the first one. So I have the other two. So I would love to have that one.
Oh wow. Yeah, you might be able to find that. A lot of people do piece out those collector's editions to try to make some extra money on eBay. So you might be able to find that. That's pretty neat. All right. So here's a good one. What is a RPG series that you feel is overrated? Why don't we start with Mandy on this one?
Oh, I don't know. Can you think of anything, Tony, that I've
That you
complained
think is
about in the
overrated?
past? Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Mandy tends to be a pretty forgiving and optimistic person about games. So
Yeah.
Okay. April, what do you think is overrated in the genre?
You're not gonna like me. You're gonna be very angry. I I do not like tactical RPGs, and everyone is so into Fire Emblem, and I don't get it. I don't. And I understand that people like it. I do, but it's just like I'm too smooth brain for tactical RPGs.
Oh no. This morning I was recording Sacred Stones. Come on.
Hey, you diss on Breath of the Wild so often. I have to give it back to you.
I love Breath of Wild 3. It's 1 and 2 that are boring. All right, so Tony, are you less forgiving? What do you think is overrated?
I'm a little less forgiving probably than Mandy is. I guess let's see. I think a lot of things are overrated. But I think probably the biggest one that's coming to mind is Final Fantasy. I do I do like Final Fantasy,
And the panel erupts.
but I think especially like 7 to 9 and maybe even 10 are overrated for what they are. But I say that coming from a PC gaming background, so like Wizardry, Might and Magic, Ultima, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Planescape Torment, those kind of games, and even going back to the Gold Box games before my time that I still very much enjoy. I feel
fast.
like those kind of games have a lot more to offer to me than a Final Fantasy does.
I guess they're kind of like a different thing though, right?
Yeah.
Or like cater to sort of different people.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Well, I think that's the beauty of role-playing games. You can get so many different things out of them. And a lot of that has to do with what you started with. So I can totally respect that opinion, even though I think Final Fantasy is something beyond reproach. I would say that my most overrated series would be Dragon Quest. I know I gave that answer back on the podcast we did with Emily and Brandon. And I caught a lot of flack from Phil because he is obsessed with Dragon Quests. I'm sure that will renew his ire. All right, so here's a good one. Favorite boss fight in an RPG? Why don't we start with Tony?
Oh, that's tough. Probably, oh man, I have to think about it more to give a complete answer, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking Kangax from Baldur's Gate 2, who was this undead lich that you hear about, and he's living underneath the big city. And I love it because the amount of preparation you have to put in to beat him. And it's like you have to be ready to dispel all these different magic ailments, and you've got to like strip his magical protections off with magical spells. And but you can learn all of the ways to like all the weaknesses of liches by talking to people throughout the city, and then finally confronting him and like being all prepared for it is really good. Actually, Furcraig from Baldur's Gate 2 is very similar.
Nice.
I like those kinds of boss fights.
Good deal. Now, was that like a storyline boss fight, or was that something that was like a side thing that you could really just build up to?
Yeah, both of those fights I mentioned were optional in that story. So something you could just find in the world.
Good times. What about you, April?
Okay, so you're gonna think it's silly, but I would have to say my favorite boss fight would be the last fight in Breath of Fire 2. Breath of Fire 2 was my first RPG when I was a kid, and I was not good at RPGs then. I barely understood the mechanics and how things worked. And getting to the end of that game and finally finding the last boss, who I guess was God because JRPGs are going to JRPG, but I was just so amazed then, and that you could have a game that had a story that was really more than just Sonic or Mario, and you're going and you work through this big underground labyrinth, and it's a struggle because there's the random encounters, which my first experience with random encounters, and you get there and he's so strong, and man, that was just such an experience for me.
Good deal. Mandy, what do you got?
I'm gonna say Melphis again. It was like Grandia was the first, well, not the first RPG I played, but the one that kind of made me fall in love with RPGs. And I remember when I did the Melphis boss fight, I had a lot of trouble with it at first, and so I would have to like reload my game and like watch the cutscene before every time, and I memorized the cutscene, and I mean it was sort of like a love-hate thing at that time, but when I finally beat him, it was very satisfying, and I love his backstory as well, and kind of the whole thing around that fight, so that's got a special spot in my heart.
Good deal. Mine was easily Sephiroth in Final Fantasy VII. I think it was something that we hadn't seen before, that was that level of cinematography and music. And it was just so epic, and the fact that it had all those phases, And that may have been something as far as like the phases and the mechanics that someone like Tony has probably seen 1,000 times in some of the older RPGs. But for console players, that was the first time really seeing something with multiple phases, and with that level of work and cinematography put into it and into the presentation of it. So that's why I loved that for sure. So the next one, and we'll go to Tony with this one, saddest scene in a role-playing game.
Oh, I think I'm gonna go with well, maybe I've got two. I'll give two. So the first one is at the end of Shining Force, and I won't spoil it, but there's a very kind of bittersweet scene. And then, but that one's a little bit happy as well. But I think an overall saddest would probably be a scene in Mass Effect 3 with Tali Zora, one of the player companions. And during the negotiation between the Geth and the Quarian, up on a cliff. So people have played Mass Effect 3, they know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Those are mine.
Good deal. What about you, April?
I really don't want to give spoilers for the story of 14, so I'm not going to include the things that make me absolutely cry about that game. So instead, I think I'm going to talk about the ending of Stray. I cried for like 20 minutes after that.
Wow.
I haven't played Stray, but that makes me want to play it.
Stray is so good. Like, it's a really, really cute and wholesome cat game until it's not.
That's very interesting.
Good times. All right, so I'm sure that Mandy and Tony appreciate you not spoiling the story in Final Fantasy 14.
Yes, thank you.
Mandy, what is your saddest scene?
Oh, I mean, probably the cutscene after the Melphis fight. Sorry that my answers are all essentially the same. But yeah, probably that one. Grandia is a very emotional game for me, so it would have to be that. Probably also, this might be a weird answer, but in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of Time, there's a lot of like surprisingly emotional stuff that happens in that, and it caught me very off guard. And yeah, it was, I don't want to say too much about it, but that was also very emotional for me.
So for me, I got two. One of them is more recent. I'm definitely going to do the Final Fantasy VII simp thing and go with Eris getting ran through. That was rough. And I kind of covered that in one of my solo podcasts about just how devastating that scene would be if it unfolded before you. I know that's great topic for a Valentine's special, but to see the person that you love so much utterly destroyed in front of you, and the personal toll of that, but also the toll that is going to take on the world and what that's going to mean, very sad. And then obviously I was a huge fan of the new Pokemon games, and it's not really a spoiler, but in the quest where you're fighting all of like the giant sized Pokemon, Arven's dog, you're getting the herbs to heal him. And it's really like a heartwarming thing, because at first you think Arven's just kind of an ass and not likable. But when you find out that he's doing all this work to try to, heal and soothe his best friend, it's pretty meaningful. So I really enjoyed that. So we'll go to Mandy with this one. In the Final Fantasy franchise, what is your favorite summon?
Oh, I don't know. I've never really thought about it before, but probably Shiva, just because I think she's cool.
That
Does
is
Lakshmi count as a summon?
Oh,
I guess not.
I don't know. I love Lakshmi in 14.
Do you like being pushed into her bosom?
Yeah.
I thought that it was really cool that the depth that 14 gave to Shiva. So many of us that have consumed that series for so long probably like Shiva, but The depth that the story gave to her, and then the incredible damn song that played during her boss fight was something else too. So it's pretty cool. April, what about you?
Um, I would have to say, believe it or not, and it's because of 10 was I can't remember its name now. Oh my god. The bird.
Belfort.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know. I loved how in 10 Yuna was just so affectionate with the bird, and the bird was affectionate back, and I just liked that.
Cool.
It's like, aw, they're friends.
What about you, Tony?
I don't know if I have a favorite summon, but I guess maybe Rama or Ramu or however you say his name. Mostly because he's had some pretty cool musical themes over the years.
Yeah, and again, he was another one that benefited from a great story and great boss fight in 14 as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Doom Train because it's a train.
You gonna suplex it?
The coolest thing to just call a terrible evil train. And yeah, can't beat that. All right, so this one's an interesting one, and we'll go with Mandy on this one again. Your favorite mini game that you encountered in a JRPG or RPG?
Ooh. Well, I love Triple Triad. I also like in Bravely Default the Norende town building thing. I don't know if that counts as a mini game. I guess it kind of does.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Nice. Good deal. April, what about you?
So again, it's Breath of Fire 2. And yeah, it was the town building.
Got some builders here.
Look, I play Minecraft, so.
What about you, Tony?
Mine's 100% Mahjong from the Yakuza games. The Yakuza line of games are Like a Dragon line of games, which is maybe a little bit cheating because it's just a simulation of Mahjong in a game. But yeah, in those games, I love just going to those little smoky parlors and playing Mahjong for hours.
Nice. Good deal. For me, it would be a toss-up between the motorcycle minigame in Final Fantasy VII. I loved that, and I loved replaying it outside of the story in the arcade in the game. And I also, in Suikoden, there was a dice game where you threw dice into a cup, and you could bet certain amounts of your money. And if you played it right, you could literally like max out your cash and like totally outfit all like 70 playable characters.
Yeah, I spent way too long playing that dice game.
yeah, for sure. So it was like save scrumming it to get the best outcome and then go get the best weapons and gear for this one and that one. So I totally got way too much into that for sure. All right, so this is a good one. Favorite song in a video game? Let's start with Tony.
Oh man, there's so many.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can give a favorite song. So I'll say my favorite. Actually, this might be a little controversial. My favorite composer is Motoi Sakuraba, actually. But if I had to pick a song, I would probably say "Traveler" from a long time ago from Shining Force 1.
Nice. What about you, April?
Soken is such a good composer, and I don't know where they are in story, so I don't want to talk about it, but like I'm just gonna name the name of the song. So if you guys aren't that far, don't look it up. But To the Edge is so good. It's so good. And the story behind what he was going through when he wrote the song, because he wrote it in the hospital while he was recovering from cancer.
Wow.
So it's just and the song has so much meaning to the characters, and I love how they stick lore in the lyrics to songs. I don't know. I love that song.
What was the name of the song again?
To the Edge.
To the Edge. Mandy, is that one in Final Bar Line?
Oh, I don't remember.
I know that they promised a long fall in the DLC.
Yeah,
but I don't.
I'm excited for that.
They have a terrible racket with that game. Like if you go up to like the $100 version, you get like a whole bunch of songs that you can't get. So
Yeah.
it's pretty evil because one of my favorite songs is one of those ones that you have to pay like $100 to get.
Yeah.
So what about you, Mandy?
There are lots of songs that I love. I'd probably say if I had to pick one, it would probably be Fight version 4, which is the final boss fight in Grandia 2. Just because, I don't know, I have a very strong connection with that game, obviously. And I love Naruki Wadari, so that's really good. But I also love One Winged Angel.
Good choice. So for me, it would be Eyes on Me, which I think you have to get the $100 version to get. That was such an incredible song and scene in 8. And then if you watch like the actual like live performance videos of it, it's incredible. And then me and Mandy were kind of talking about it on Twitter the other day, the whole soundtrack to Transistor.
Yeah.
Insane. If anyone hasn't played that game or listened to that soundtrack, it's completely worth it. Ashley Barrett and Darren Korb are the musicians involved in that, and they are both incredible. He's an incredible studio musician and writer, and she is an incredible vocalist. So definitely worth checking out for sure. All right, so let's get to a couple console-based questions before we wrap up here. So your favorite PS1 RPG? Let's start with Mandy.
Ooh, I mean, probably Final Fantasy VII, I'm gonna have to say.
That's the right answer. What about you, April?
I didn't own a PlayStation 1 until you let me borrow yours. Because we were a Nintendo household. So, was Wild Arms 2 on PlayStation?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, 3 was the one that was on PS2.
So, yeah, and only because it was the only JRPG I played on the console, because I didn't really own it for very long.
Good deal. What about you, Tony?
There are so many games I want to play on PS1 that I haven't played yet.
Yeah,
like
me
some of
too.
the Saga games and Vagrant Story, things like that. Of the games I have played, I think it's a toss-up for me between Star Ocean and Legend of Dragoon.
Good deal. I would say mine is definitely a toss-up between Suikoden and Final Fantasy VII. Suikoden, I can't. They almost don't compare because it's an ensemble game. You can put so much more time into it. But 7, I've said before, I think it's beyond reproach. I think it's why the JRPG caught on in the Western market. If that game didn't exist, we're all playing Mario still, and that's all we're doing. So definitely think that was a big deal. All right, so something more modern, and we'll start with Tony. Your favorite RPG on the Switch?
Oh, these are all such hard questions. What RPGs have I played on the Switch? I guess I played Xenoblade 2, which I enjoyed.
We played Octopath, right?
That's true, yeah. Well, maybe I'll say Octopath is my favorite Switch RPG that I've played, though I think the Saga Collection is probably my favorite RPG I played on the Switch, which is not really a Switch game. So
good times. April, do you have an answer on this one, or have you not really?
Yeah, pass.
She's PC Master Race currently.
Yeah, I play most of my games on PC.
I'm the same.
What about you, Mandy?
Well, technically, Grandia 2 is on the Switch, so that would be my favorite. But as for newer games, I don't really know. Probably Octopath Traveler. But there are lots of RPGs that I still haven't played on the Switch yet. But yeah, I really did love the battle system in Octopath, and I was very, very into it when it came out.
Would you say you like that better than Breath of the Wild?
Oh, well, I do love Breath of the Wild. I think I think that I do like Octopath more because the combat is more my thing. But I really love Breath of the Wild for just the whole atmosphere of it and yeah, all the freedom and everything.
Good deal. Mine is hands down Engage. It took over my life for like 3 weeks. The week it came out, I was on PTO, and I was playing like 10, 12 hours a day. It was really addicting. I love all the characters in it, and just about ready for a second playthrough of it now that they added all those emblem rings in. So
yeah,
definitely.
And they just fixed the online finally, so you can actually do the relay things now.
Yeah,
which is really
cool.
Because
I didn't even really get to try it, so
yeah,
it should be pretty neat. So the last question in the lightning round, and we'll start with Tony on this one. What would your class be if you were plunked into a JRPG right now?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe like probably either like a paladin or like some kind of divine caster type character.
Nice.
Like a cleric or something.
Good deal. What about you, April?
So I want to joke and say I'd be a freaking gatherer main. Like I'm just thrust into the story and I'm like, I just want to cut trees. What are you doing? But I mean, I guess a caster if I have to.
Good deal. What about you, Mandy?
Well, I always thought of myself as a mage, but then when I played Final Fantasy XIV, I started off as a black mage, and I had a lot of trouble with it because I like to run around and I don't like to stand still and wait for cast times. So I think I'm more interested in like ranged physical damage these days. So maybe like a machinist. I play machinist in 14 and I'm obsessed with that. So probably something like that or an archer.
Nice.
Mandy's got a gun.
Good deal. I would absolutely be a crusader. Crusader, I remember when the class was introduced into Ragnarok Online, I was obsessed with it. I've always liked the idea of being tanky, but also holy. And I can kind of imagine, I know she said caster, but she'd be like the little like a nun girl that I'm protecting that has like all the, holy mystical powers. And I'm using my great crusader powers and force to keep her safe. So that's my little
yeah. Well, there you go. We got our front line and we got our back line.
Yeah.
We're a full party.
Good deal. We're ready to take on some of those bosses from like Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. So we're getting towards the end here. I definitely want to thank everyone for coming on. But Mandy is a great content creator, folks. If you have not checked out her stuff, she makes some incredible gaming videos, but also the things she does with her seasonal videos are really amazing. She takes great nature footage and like B-roll stuff of her like walking around outside and doing things and really ties it in very well with the gameplay footage. So it's something I really haven't seen someone do. So if you haven't checked her out, check her out. And I'm going to throw it over to you, Mandy. Can you tell us maybe some plans for the future and then tell us where our listeners can find you?
Well, thank you. That was very sweet of you to say. For the future, I'm planning on just kind of keeping up with similar sort of stuff. I do have a few videos that I want to make that kind of get maybe a little bit more personal. I want to talk about kind of like my journey in gaming and kind of why it's so meaningful to me and stuff like that. And yeah, you can find me under Miss Mandia on Twitter or on YouTube.
Good deal. Tony, you have any plans for content creation, or are you just going to try to support Mandy as much as you can?
The plan for now is just to support Mandy as much as I can. I think her channel is really super cool. Like you said, the combination of all the different things she puts into it. And I see how much work she puts into all of her videos. So I know there's a lot going into them. And she's got a couple cool ones coming up. So stay tuned.
Good deal.
For myself, for content creation, one day I would love to record drum videos, mostly of video game music. but I don't currently have a setup for that. So, but I would love to do that sometime in the future.
So stay tuned, guys. Tony might be out here. I know you had posted a video the other day of you working on some stuff. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, I was putting together like an old Japanese PC game drum kit, basically, on my drum pad.
Nice.
So
good deal.
Maybe I'll post some more of that on Twitter.
For sure. April, do you think you're ever gonna stream or anything?
I want to. Like, I've been wanting to stream 14 and I've been wanting to stream Minecraft. So it's just a matter of, taking the step and just, doing it.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, guys, I thank you all for coming on. And once again, in conclusion, gaming is something that can bring people together, whether it's as friends or whether it's as partners. So make sure that you game and game hard, and I'm sure you'll find your soulmate online like we all did. So once again, I thank everyone for coming on. Listeners, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, stay creepy.